I believe we're live, ladies and gentlemen. Let's deal with the Arcane Bear. We are in unprecedented times, and that's what we're going to be going over today. I just saw a notice come out that Trump is going to be declaring a national emergency. That's actually been out for about 3 hours. Again, this brings some really interesting questions to the table. So what we're going to do today, because we got about an hour or two before I have to take off, is I'm just going to hang out with you guys for the day. So for those of you that are watching this later in the evening, or maybe another day even, this is just going to be a live hangout session, because I think more and more frequently during these quarantine times and with some of the data we've seen, we're going to need online community places to hang out, communicate together. So I'll be opening the public Bear Den again, and the private Bear Den is for paying members only. But again, the national emergency states that we're seeing right now are going to be very interesting to keep an eye on. Now, there's one of the I wish sometimes there's so many videos to try to watch in a day. So the state of emergency is basically an empowered action that the governments take during these times that would help impose certain policies that are normally the government would not be permitted to take. This can go everywhere from obviously natural disasters, medical, civil unrest, armed conflicts, and pandemics. So declaring a state of emergency gives the government more law. So state of emergency can be also used to rational or pretext the suspending of rights or freedoms guaranteed under the country's constitution or basic law. And this is one of the things we'd always been a little worried about. And this is one of the things of the reactionary problems of something like a pandemic is we know naturally all of us want to self-quarantine, or at least anyone intelligent should want to do that. Social distancing, wearing a mask if you think you're sick so you don't cough all over everything. This is everything an intelligent person would do. If you're not doing that, well, I'm sorry to say, you're probably not all that intelligent. So the government shouldn't necessarily need to go to their way to get people to do that. But the problem is, lots of people are fucking stupid. So you have to impose these laws. Now, I'm not a fan of this, and I do not in any way, shape, or form think it should be necessary. But when you have an undereducated society, and I'm not saying that that's anyone in the Bear Den, you guys I'm just trying to express my sentiments here. You guys are some of the most brilliant people I've been able to meet. I'm very grateful for all the family. It's absolutely wonderful. I like that we have a small, tight group of people instead of just a mass amount of numbers. For any of you that have read Nassim Taleb, small is beautiful. There's a reason why that quote exists, is because you are much more powerful as a small group of dedicated people than a large group of inhibited people. Not uninhibited, but inhibited people. Useless in comparison. So again, I think what they're going to do here in the declaring of national emergency is start to strike up new viewpoints in how they can get away with some of this. So we do have some past instances of what has happened in these these states of emergency before. So here you see the United States Constitution implicitly provides emergency powers an article to provide an executive power. So right now we're waiting for Donald Trump to basically go live and start talking to us. But here you can see there's a live stream from NBC or Global News, and he's not stepped out of that door yet to give us any more valuable information. So what we're going to do in the meantime is just go over all this, and then we're going to take a look at how the markets, I think, will kind of react to this. So Congress may be able to authorize the government to call forth the militia to execute laws and suppress insurrection or repel invasion. Again, these are pretty big deals here. Not saying this is going to happen, but guys, this is what has and could happen in the event of a national state of emergency. And as you can see here, Virginia, Wisconsin, Arizona, Michigan, Massachusetts, Colorado, New Jersey, these have all declared a state of national emergency. So going into that as a full state, again, Washington State declared a national emergency in February 29th. I wish that was more pronounced. Everyone should have been declaring a state of emergency. Not panic, but figure out what to do, self-isolate, stay away from other fucking people, don't shake hands, don't touch your face, wash your goddamn hands every time you do anything, and effectively try not to get other people sick. That's why the masks are important. And if you don't have a mask and you think you might be sick, put a fucking sleeve from your t-shirt over your face. Just cover something so you're not coughing everywhere, again, spreading that disease. The masks aren't really designed to keep me safe necessarily. It's designed to keep you safe from me, potentially, especially with an asymptomatic disease. So again, here in the United States, Congress may authorize the government to suspend consideration of writs or habeas corpus when in cases of rebellion or invasion of public safety may require it. Felony charges may be brought without presentation to the grand jury, indictments and calling it, again, a rise of militia and public danger. And the state of government may engage in war without consent of approval if it's actually invaded. This is some pretty big deal. So aside from these, many provisions of laws exist in various jurisdictions which take effect only upon the executive declaration of emergency. Some 500 federal laws take take effect upon the presidential declaration of emergency, and the National Emergencies Act regulates this process at the federal level. It requires the president to specifically identify the provisions acted to renew the declaration and annually so to prevent arbitrary, broad of open-ended emergency use cases. Presidents have occasionally taken action justified as necessary or prudent because of the state of emergency, only to have the action struck down in court as unconstitutional. As an example, a state governor or local mayor may declare a state emergency within his or her jurisdiction, and this is common at the state level in response to natural disasters. The Federal Emergency Management Agency maintains a system of assets, personal training, etc. So this could go anywhere from, at least what we've heard in New York, the utility companies are going to have to leave your electricity on, because if you can't afford your electricity because of the coronavirus, because you got laid off, the United States government is saying that you will get basically a stimulus package to try to help curb the effects. Because at this point, if we go into a total economic recession, it could be just as dramatic, if not more deadly for the average person than all the like the virus combined, right? So this is important to remember, that this could have a lot of important implications on the market itself. They may even at one point decide to just suspend the stock market, which brings us again very briefly to Bitcoin, something that they cannot suspend the trading of, currently sitting at around $5,100. I closed out the short that I was in. We're looking again, this type of trading is so volatile, dramatic. You really want to be glued to the computer on a minute to minute basis to kind of watch this stuff. We've jumped up to our second line of the fan here, and we're looking to close above this line. If we do not, I do suspect that as a pandemic and a national emergency would incur, the prices could go very low on Bitcoin. Again, that $1,500 video we made with Tyler Jenks, God bless his soul, maybe we will see that again. And that's the thing about technical analysis a lot of people don't understand. The pandemic could be that thing that triggers that movement, and it was not necessarily all that important what did it. It's just the fact that it happens. And we had long speculated that this massive wave that we had seen up from $3,000 could have very well been nothing but a B wave. And there's a lot of evidence for that to potentially have been the case. So if we look at Bitcoin here again, this is, we're waiting for Donald Trump to come out, and we'll watch live as he goes through and pick out all the data that they're looking at, because I think it's going to be important. So now that we've gone over the state of emergency, I just want to take a quick look at Bitcoin, because I know a lot of you guys are going to want to probably trade this volatility. And we're going to go out to the weekly, although I can't, my internet's not anywhere near as fast as it normally is today. And that might be the case for quite some time, recognizing that people might be using the internet to watch Netflix on a significantly more frequent basis than almost ever before. Let's take a look. Yeah, I don't know why we're not getting the smoothest data stream right now. I definitely can't. This is the price you pay for living in the jungle, I guess. Well, let's skip that. Let's assume that you can just trust what I'm saying, or not. Go verify it by doing your own charting. But I'd always suspected that this run up to the 13,000 mark could have been just a giant over emotional B wave, as we saw what the smart money thought they were rush into Bitcoin, the hedge funds and all these big money managers being like, oh yeah, Bitcoin is the future, which I think it is. But again, at the wrong time, maybe, right? This Bitcoin could come out of the gate here very strongly and very slowly over the next few years. I think the climb back up to the $10,000, $100,000 mark could take a long time. We're looking at maybe a few years. And I had said that multiple times in our paid private newsletter, that I thought this could still be the potential B wave that could take us down to $1,500. As we broke the channel at around $8,000, $9,000, that was the indication to me that we were going to go considerably lower. And I did everything in my power to basically try to protect my portfolio, because I think that's what we can do right now, is just at least try to preserve our wealth and not lose it at such a dramatic rate. So this type of education is extremely important. So if we go back here, I'm just going to read a quick little bit from Bloomberg as well as The Guardian. Neither of my favorite news sources, but they are helping us understand what a national emergency might incur. And I'm actually going to open up the National Emergencies Act here as well, so we can dig a little deeper. So we'll go back to Bloomberg in a second, but we'll look at this National Emergencies Act, which is the ability for the government to essentially terminate certain authorities with respect to national emergencies still in effect, and provide orderly implementation and termination of future national emergencies. So this act was enacted in 1976, 6 and September 14th, does the United States federal law passed to end all previous national emergencies to formalize the emergency powers of the president. The act empowers the president to activate special powers during a crisis, but impose certain procedural formalities when invoking such powers. The perceived need for these laws arose from the scope and number of laws granting special powers to the executive times in national emergency. So as a background here, the first president to issue this proclamation was Woodrow Wilson in 1917, and it says, "I've found that there exists a national emergency arising from insufficiency of maritime tonnage, blah, 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 blah." So again, what we're looking at here is a potential change in the way that the government regularly does business. Emergency powers, down in this area here, Congress has delegated at least 136 distinct statutory emergency powers to the president, each available upon the declaration of this emergency. Only 13 of these require a declaration from Congress itself. The remaining 123 are assumed by an executive declaration with no further congressional input. Again, that means a large majority of the things that the president can do, he can then now do without any say from Congress. And these are pretty important. Again, I'm not American. I don't live in the United States. I'm just looking at the implications that might result in a stock market decline further than we're seeing right now. And again, what's interesting here, and someone brought this up in the private group, and I think is a great question, is could they just lock up trading? And yes, I think that they could. I don't really believe there's any reason to say that they can't just say, I don't know how much exists in this National Emergencies Act, but I don't know that they couldn't just lock it up and say, hey, look, no more trading is going to take place. The markets are closed for 30 days because you guys are going to panic and make it worse instead of us trying to help mandate it. And again, I'm not a fan of this. I'm just trying to be aware of what might potentially come from this National Emergencies Act. As we see the Dow Jones here on the 1 hour dropping from the the S&P 500 dropping from 300 point all the way down to the 258 point represents one of the biggest moves we've seen in quite a long time, of a 25% drop, effectively wiping out a good chunk of the gains made in almost a year. Yeah, we've returned exactly back to where we were almost at the bottom of 2019. That in itself is a huge move and has wiped out all the gains people had made in the previous year for those that have been sitting in the stock market. And I'm sure a lot of them had already exited, but if they had not, they're going to be sweating bullets. I actually had a call from a good friend of mine who manages a lot of money, saying that one of the private bankers at Wells Fargo had committed suicide. And I believe that this is some of the WebBot material that we had seen around Cliff High's reports about this particular moment. So I'm playing very, very, very loosely, and I'm looking at my improvisational standpoints for how to enter and exit markets during these absolutely crazy times. And again, remember, ladies and gentlemen, your health and your family, your loved ones, they're more important than your portfolio. Hopefully it doesn't take you losing some of them to realize that. I know I get super frustrated and aggravated with all this crazy shit going on. I'm just trying to, because I'm young, this is the first time I've seen such a crazy event. Even in 2008 and 2001, when I was around during the collapse of the market, I had nothing to do with it. I wasn't relying on work. I was like a street kid, at least close to 2003. It's like playing music on the side of the road and busking and hitchhiking around. So it didn't affect my regular life. But now that I'm being a part of it, I think one of the things I really like about Seneca's approach to practicing living with very little is to remind ourselves that if worst comes to worst, you could take everything I have away from me and my life is still so rich and so valuable. So aside from that, ladies and gentlemen, the playing around the portfolio, don't get too agitated by this stuff. I'm prone to do that. Like zoom into the screen. I'm watching Bitcoin on the fucking 1 minute chart. Like I haven't done that in forever. But this is an unprecedented experience. So technically we're still waiting for Donald Trump to come out and address, make this national emergency address. So I'm just trying to, oh, here we go. Perfect. Look at that timing come in. So again, what we're going to do here is we're essentially going to watch this national address together, and I'm going to pause it as this data comes out. So I'm watching in the background with you guys, and I guess we're all going to discover whatever this is together. This is live from the Global News Network right now. So thank you guys all for joining us. I'm going to basically follow this, and we'll see what happens. Oh, wait. I can't hear anything from Donald Trump. Hopefully they adjust the volumes on this because...
Beautiful day in the Rose Garden.
There we go.
Appreciate everybody being here. Today I'd like to provide an update to the American people on several decisive new actions we're taking in our very vigilant effort to combat and ultimately defeat the virus. We've been working very hard on this. We've made tremendous progress. When you compare what we've done to other areas of the world, it's pretty incredible. A lot of that had to do with the early designation and the closing of the borders. And as you know, Europe was just designated as the hotspot right now, and we closed that border a while ago. So that was
Again, so what we're going to do here is we're just going to watch and pick out any positive or like any positive, negative data we can from his speech here.
And shared sacrifice, national determination, we will overcome the threat of the virus. I also announced Wednesday night, following the advice of our medical professionals, who are doing a tremendous job, and we appreciate it very much, that we're suspending the entry of foreign nationals who have been to Europe in the last 14 days.
Okay, so I'm gonna show you guys I'm gonna give you my face back here because I'm also trying to trade these volatile markets. So this is the fun part about the live stream, is you guys are just gonna have to bear with me as we kind of go through this. So if you guys want, ask any of your questions and leave them below. And this is the fun thing about the live stream, I guess, is that we don't really know where it's gonna go from here. We just kind of dive in and follow it as we can. Because I believe so, Bitcoin's starting to drop quite dramatically. It looks like it's actually going to make an inverse head and shoulders and probably return that. So I'll just spin the monitor down here. I'm sorry for the distracted show, guys. It's like part of this is me just wanting to hang out with you guys as well as share the data as it comes up. But in these moments, you know, you want to look at being able to effectively pivot in and out of situations. So I've been taking shorts and closing them quite tightly just because it's acting as insurance, right? So I'm not trying to make money off this. I'm just keeping my insurance very cheaply cost right now, right? Essentially entering or exiting a trade at the same price based off the levels that I'm watching. That way, all of a sudden, if it does drop dramatically, I'm insured. And if it goes up, I close out at a very cheap price. And this is what Nassim Taleb so brilliantly calls an option. It gives me the option to stay safe from that downside, not expecting that there's going to all of a sudden be a massive amount of upside. And again, yesterday when we closed our short position around 4,400, that was just happened to be beautifully timed. So I'll give you guys, we'll go back to this national address and we'll keep listening here. So I apologize for that. I wish I got to get a second screen here. I think is really the game plan. I'm going to open up my other computer here so we can do this together.
Citizens, permanent residents, and our families, any of the families returning from Europe will be subject to extra screening as well as self-isolation for a period of 14 days. As the World Health Organization confirmed today, many of the things that what we said were 100% correct, including our designation before them of Europe. Like our earlier very aggressive actions with China, this measure will save countless lives. I appreciate a number of the folks behind me, a number of the people behind me said that that saved a lot of lives, that early designation. But it is only the beginning of what we're really doing, and now we're in a different phase. We had some very old and obsolete rules that we had to live with. It worked under certain circumstances, but not under mass circumstances. They were there for a long time, they were in place for a long time, and we're breaking them down now. And they're very usable for certain instances, but not for this. To unleash the full power of the federal government in this effort today, I am officially declaring a national emergency. Two very big words. The action I am taking will open up access to up to $50 billion of very important and a large amount of money for states and territories and localities in our shared fight against this disease.
Okay, so there's the first bit. The as a state of emergency, they're opening up the coffers for $50 billion to essentially try to keep everything running smoothly if people have to quarantine for a long time. That's what we've seen from some of the other states as well. That means boasting and paying for electrical bills, and who knows how far that could go. So let's keep listening.
In furtherance of the order, I'm urging every state to set up emergency operation centers effective immediately. You're going to be hearing from some of the largest companies and greatest retailers and medical companies in the world. They're standing right behind me and inside of me. I'm also asking every hospital in this country to activate its emergency preparedness plan so that they can meet the needs of Americans everywhere. The hospitals are very engaged. New York and various other places are also very engaged. I just spoke with Governor Cuomo. We had a very good conversation, and we're working very strongly with many states, including New York. The emergency orders I'm issuing today will also confer broad new authority to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. The Secretary of HHS will be able to immediately waive provisions of applicable laws and regulations to give doctors, all hospitals, and healthcare providers maximum flexibility to respond to the virus and care for patients. This includes the following critical authorities: the ability to waive laws to enable telehealth, a fairly new and incredible thing that's happened in the not so distant past. I tell you, what they've done with telehealth is incredible. It gives remote doctors visits and hospital check-ins, the power to waive certain federal license requirements so that doctors from other states can provide
so this is interesting as well, just for everyone that knows. My doctor here, I have on WhatsApp, so we've been able to do telecalls for quite some time. Every time I'm like, wait a second, if I got bit by what kind of spider or snake? Like,
services in states with the greatest need. Number two, the ability to waive requirements that critical access hospitals limit the number of beds to 25 and the length of stay to 96 hours. The ability to waive the requirements of a 3-day.
well, that was a big one too. Again, limiting the time that people are supposed to be in the ICU. Again, we do know that the critical care number of this virus is quite high. For the younger patients, not so much. Although we have seen some skewing in those numbers. But as we've seen out of Italy, there has been some complications with, well, who's going to get this ICU bed versus who can potentially manage by themselves here.
Hospital stay prior to admission to a nursing home, big thing. The authority to waive the rules to hinder hospitals' ability to bring additional physicians on board or obtain needed office space. They can do as they want. They can do what they have to do. They know what they have to do. Now they don't have any problem getting it done. The authority to waive rules that severely restrict where hospitals can care for patients within the hospital itself, ensuring that the emergency capacity can be quickly established. We'll remove or eliminate every obstacle necessary to deliver our people the care that they need and that they're entitled to. No resource will be spared, nothing whatsoever. 10 days ago, I brought together the CEOs of commercial labs at the White House and directed them to immediately begin working on a solution to dramatically increase the availability of tests. Other countries have called us and worked with us, and they're doing similar things or will be doing similar things. As a result of that action today, we're announcing a new partnership with private sector to vastly increase and accelerate our capacity to test for the coronavirus. We want to make sure that those who need a test can get a test very safely, quickly, and conveniently, but we don't want people to take a test if we feel that they shouldn't be doing it. And we don't want everyone running out and taking, only if you have certain symptoms.
Yeah, that's an important one too, guys. I mean, you definitely don't want to go to a hospital if you have like a rhinovirus. So for instance, if you know that your cold started mostly in your nose, congestion, larynx, like upper respiratory system, it's not COVID-19. Whereas if you start to have lower respiratory problems, trouble breathing, just dyspnea, which is like a frequent, like a dog would fucking breathe, then you're a bit more likely, especially with a high fever. If you have no fever and a runny nose and a cough, you have a rhinovirus. Very, very different. Very, very different. So I think what he's saying here is important. And sadly, none of this information is freely available or easy to access yet. Hopefully they'll start doing a better job, but really the WHO and the CDC dropped the ball a long time ago. This should have taken place day one to mitigate the downside of this global pandemic instead of just waiting to see, well, hey, we don't know exactly. Well, that's the fucking point. You don't know. So just take it very seriously out the gate. And if it wasn't, we can go, whew, it's a good thing we took that more seriously than we needed to, because if all of a sudden it's way more serious than we thought, and we're like, oh, fuck, should have done a bit more, I guess, hey? It's counterintuitive in the unknown unknowns in how you assess risk, because you have no fucking clue. So I think it's really important. We should have done that a long time ago, but here we go. Better late than never, I guess, right?
Using federal emergency authorities, the FDA approved a new test for the virus. We did this within hours after receiving the application from Roche, a process that would normally take weeks. We therefore expect up to 500,000 additional tests will be available early next week. We'll be announcing locations probably on Sunday night. I want to thank Roche, great company, for their incredible work. I'd also like to thank Thermo Fisher. The FDA's goal is to hopefully authorize the application within 24 hours. It'll go very quickly. It's going very quickly, which will bring additionally 1.4 million tests on board next week, and 5 million within a month. I doubt we'll need anywhere near that. At the same time, we've been in discussions with pharmacies and retailers to make drive-through tests available in the critical locations identified by public health professionals. The goal is for individuals to be able to drive up and be swabbed without having to leave your car. I want to thank Google. Google is helping to develop a website. It's going to be very quickly done.
Go Google.
Unlike websites of the past, to determine whether a test is warranted. And
Okay, sorry. Trump says some really fucking funny shit. It will be developed really fast, unlike websites of the past. Wait, you mean a place where you can log in and get your regular information, like a WordPress site, maybe?
to facilitate testing at a nearby convenient location. We have many, many locations behind us, by the way. We cover this country and large parts of the world, by the way. We're not going to be talking about the world right now, but we cover very, very strongly our country. Stores in virtually every location. Google has 1,700 engineers working on this right now. They've made tremendous progress. Our overriding goal is to stop the spread of the virus and to help all Americans who have been impacted by this. Again, we don't want everybody taking this test. It's totally unnecessary. And this will pass. This will pass through, and we're going to be even stronger for it. We've learned a lot. Tremendous amount has been learned. I want to thank Deborah Birx, and I want to ask her maybe to come up and say a few words as to what's happening. Dr. Birx is a highly respected person I've gotten to know very well over the last 6 days, and what we've done is rebuilt something that was very old-fashioned, somewhat obsolete, certainly obsolete when it comes to the kind of numbers that we're talking about. Dr. Birx, please. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. I think you know at the beginning of this epidemic, HHS through CDC proactively developed an assay built on the existing flu surveillance system. That surveillance system was then converted to diagnostic system. But last Tuesday, seeing the spread of the virus around the globe, the President realized that our current approach to testing was inadequate to meet the needs of the American public. He asked for an entire overhaul of the testing approach. He immediately called the private sector laboratories to the White House, as noted, and charged them with developing a high throughput quality platform that can meet the needs of the American public. We are grateful to LabCorp and Quest for taking up the charge immediately after the meeting, and within 72 hours bringing additional testing access, particularly to the outbreak areas of Washington State and California, and now across the country. We are also very grateful to the universities and large hospital systems that took up the charge to develop their own quality tests, made available by new FDA guidance. This is
Okay, so the plus side here is, he didn't come out and sound as crazy as he did in the national address. This national state of emergency seems to be better planned out. When he banned all flights from Europe, it was very crazy to watch. He did not sound calm, and I'm sure he did not strike like a sense of confidence. This sounds a lot more confident in their direction of what they plan to do here. So let's keep watching.
This resulted in expanded testing across New York, California, Washington, Colorado, and you see sometimes those drive-through options that have been made available through these high throughput options. Following the meeting last week, major commercial laboratory equipment and diagnostic companies took immediate action to adopt and develop new testing systems. Last night, the initial company, Roche, received FDA approval, moving from request to development to approval in record time. This innovative approach centered fully on unleashing the power of the private sector, focusing on providing convenient testing to hundreds of thousands of Americans within short turnaround times. In less than 2 weeks together, we have developed a solution that we believe will meet the future testing needs of Americans. I understand how difficult this has been. I was part of the HIV/AIDS response in the 80s. We knew from first finding cases in 1981, it took us to almost 1985 to have a test. It took us another 11 years to have effective therapy. It is because of the lessons learned from that we were able to mobilize and bring those individuals that were key to the HIV response to this response. I understand that a lot of this behind the scenes action over the last couple of weeks was invisible to the press and the American people. But this intense effort has not only resulted in innovative solutions, but an automated high throughput system bringing the availability of these quality coronavirus testing to the American people at unprecedented speed. Finally, I want you to know in South Korea, they did have a large number of tests available over the last several weeks. Their positivity rate is between 3 and 4%. With LabCorp and Quest expanded testing, their positivity rate is between 1 and 2%. So we want to also announce this new approach to testing, which will start in the screening website up here, facilitated by Google, where clients and patients and people of interest can go, fill out a screening questionnaire, move down for symptoms or risk factors, yes. They would move down this and be told where the drive-through options would be for them to receive this test. The labs will then move to the high throughput automated machines to be able to provide results in 24 to 36 hours. That is the intent of this approach. We have seen it work just in our own United States, and we want to bring this across the continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'd like to maybe have Tony, do you want to come up? You become a...
So Tony Fauci, the guy he's about to invite on, is a fantastic doctor. I've really appreciated his talks with the Journal of American Medical Association and the podcast that they do at JAMA Network. If you're interested in learning more, you go to the JAMA Network on YouTube and you can watch those podcasts. And just as a side note, it's kind of interesting to see both Bitcoin and the S&P 500 actually start to move up during this state of national emergency. I think it means that people feel more trust that they're going to do it properly and that they'll be able to resolve this even if it does get difficult. So in the S&P 500 since earlier yesterday, we've already rose in 6.17%. And Bitcoin actually is doing something not too dissimilar right now. And again, in the exact same time as this. So here we saw at the bottom of that candle wick come down 9%, right? So that we're seeing very similar gap ups right now as we watch this data come forward. So we'll just keep watching, see what the stock market does on the side, and Bitcoin, again, both going up under this as positive news here.
I think everybody out here knows you pretty well, but Tony has been doing a tremendous job working long hours, and you've seen a lot happen, but this has been, it's been a great experience, and working with you has been terrific. Tony, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This is an example of another example of what I've been referring to in my discussions with many of you in the audience as a proactive, leaning forward, aggressive, trying to stay ahead of the curve. And what you're seeing now with this order is that we're going to be able to remove the constraints so that people at the state, the local level, the individual physician, all the way up through the federal government will have as many constraints as possible removed for them to do everything they possibly can so that we can implement the things that we've been talking about. The containment, the mitigation, so that, as I've said many times, that curve that I refer to that goes up, we don't want to have that curve. We want to suppress it down to that small mound. And I think what we've done today is something that is going to be a very important element in having us be successful in doing that. We still have a long way to go. There will be many more cases, but we'll take care of that. And ultimately, as the president said, this will end. But what's going on here today is going to help it to end sooner than it would have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. If I could, some of these folks we know, they're celebrities in their own right. They're the biggest business people, the greatest retailers anywhere in the world, and one of them is Doug McMillan from Walmart. And I'd like to have Doug, if you would, say a few words, wherever you may be. Good, Doug, please.
When we got the call yesterday from the White House, we were eager to do our part to help serve the country. And given what we're facing, that's certainly important to do. We should all be doing that. So we've been asked to make portions of our parking lot available in select locations in the beginning and scaling over time as supply increases so that people can experience the drive-through experience that the president described. We'll stay involved and do everything we can from a supply chain point of view to be of assistance. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it very much. I'll just stay right over here. And Richard, if you could come up, please. Richard, please. Walgreens, thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. President. And similar to Doug and Walmart, we're happy to stand in here and help in communities all across America, because a lot of times when we have natural disasters, our stores are a beacon in the community, and this situation is no different. So we look forward to partnering with the CDC, the administration, HHS, and the task force, and specifically to the Vice President's doing such a fantastic job. We're ready to engage and help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great job. Thank you very much. Brian Cornell, Target.
So this is really interesting. You know, a lot when you look at Event 201, which is one of the tabletop exercises they did for what a pandemic would look like, the main key point here is actually a cooperation between the governments and the private industry to make sure the supply chain actually keeps functioning on with the necessities overstocking the let's say the luxurious or the unnecessary. So this is a really interesting. There's something here. I mean, obviously we don't know what it is, but this is the government and private industry working hand in hand, and it's not always the best thing, but it's what's necessary right now. So again, we're always a little worried about what the government does with these overreaching capabilities, especially when they're collaborating with private industry. But we'll just keep going ahead and listening to this. I'm just trying to stay pertinent.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, please.
Well, Mr. President, thank you for inviting us here today, along with our colleagues from Walmart and Walgreens and our partners at CVS. Normally, you view us as competitors, but today we're focused on a common competitor, and that's defeating the spread of the coronavirus. And we look forward to working with the administration to do our fair share to alleviate this growing threat. So thank you for including us today. In the near term, we're all committed to making sure we're keeping our stores open to serve the American consumer who's rapidly stocking up on household essentials, key food and beverage items that they need during this time, making sure we run safe stores and create an environment that's safe for our team members, with making sure that they feel supported during this very critical time. So thank you for including us.
Thank you very much. Great job. Is Tom here? Tom Pollard? Tom Pollard, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. As CEO of Becton Dickinson, we're one of the leading providers of medical devices as well as collection products for testing of coronavirus. We're ramping up our manufacturing capacity to ensure that the right collection devices and testing equipment are ready to address this issue. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
President.
you very much, Tom. Great job you've done. Stephen Rakowski, Quest Diagnostics, please. Great job. Thank you very
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President. So as mentioned, we were called with the leadership of the Vice President last week to come together as an industry. And we took advantage of that opportunity to work with the FDA, to work with the Center for Disease Control, and we are up and running with tests in a number of our facilities. As the President mentioned, we now have capabilities from Roche Diagnostics that we will bring into our facilities this weekend. And I know myself and us, my colleague at LabCorp, will be doing the same. So the capacity available to the American public to support this action with consumers will be considerably increased in the next few weeks. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you
President.
very much, I appreciate it. Thanks. And Matt Sauce, please, of Roche. Matt, thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah, I can see. I see you guys chatting in the background. Someone said the who's who of corporate criminals. Again, we the necessity of the private industry is important. Look, I'm a huge fan of capitalism. I think unfettered, focused with morals, it's the strongest driving force on our planet. Not to say that it has all the morals we would hope it to, but these situations are unprecedented. If you have a death rate of 3% of the 70 to 80% of the world's population, you could lose hundreds of millions of people in a very short period of time, which would overwhelm the hospital systems. You need to try to do something, and this is them probably starting to try to do everything within their power. So hopefully, again, I'm not a fan of government. I usually don't like what they do, but let's hope that doesn't overextend the arm and the reach of it too much. So this is why we watch these things. Notice the market is still going up under this conversation. So the market likes this conversation. Business is loving this. Well, not really loving it. It's been a big drop.
We want to thank the FDA for their rapid approval of our coronavirus test. We really appreciate the partnership with the CDC and the FDA to get that to market as fast as possible, because it's critical for us to make that available to help patients in need, and working with laboratories to get it up and going in the near future, which will bring hundreds of thousands of tests available to patients in need in the United States. So thank you.
And you can do it. You can do it. A great company. David Pierre of Signify Health, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are the largest house call provider in the U.S., and we go to the homes of the most vulnerable elderly. And through our network and our logistics engine, we stand ready to help and provide our clinicians to be where they're needed, whether they're in retail clinics or in the home, and we're here to assist. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we'll be changing a lot of the rules, regulations for future, should this happen in the future, which we hope it never does, but it will, I guess, somewhere out there. There's some bad ones over the years, and I guess that'll continue to an extent, but we hope it never happens. But we're going to be changing a lot of the old rules and specifications and regulations. Adam Schechter.
I would like to know what rules and specifications are changing. Can you give me a document? How about a PDF, or maybe just give me like a point form, like, hey, we're gonna change this, and this. We're just gonna change some stuff because it's.
Who's really been of tremendous help. LabCorp, please. Adam.
Thank you, Mr. President. At LabCorp, we're working every second of every day to increase the number of tests that we can run. We're working with academic medical centers, with our colleagues at Quest, with other hospital and other laboratories to ensure that we do everything we can to increase the testing as we move forward. And I can tell you, we understand how important the testing is, and we are committed to doing everything possible.
Great job. Thank you. Thomas Moriarty, CVS. We all know CVS. Thank you. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have been focused since the start of making sure our patients and the customers we serve have the information they need, the safety they need as well. We are committed to working with the administration and local public health officials to make this work as well. And thank you, sir, for the honor.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Great job. And Bruce Greenstein, LHC Group, tremendously talented people. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, thank you for the honor of being here. And the home health industry has been treating patients and seniors in the safety and comfort of their own home for decades. We're very proud to be part of the equation for testing in their own home. For Americans that can't get to a test site or live in rural areas far away from a retail establishment, we're here to help and to partner with our hospitals and physicians, as well as the people we have here today that will be doing testing around the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good test. Okay, I like that. That's good. Also announcing the following emergency executive actions today.
See Trump just snub his fucking handshake. Good. This is a fucking elbow bump. Yeah, people need to should have started doing that a long time ago, because it takes time to change your social habits. It's not fucking easy. It takes time to remember not to touch your goddamn face. You got to say it like a mantra, like, don't touch my face. Like, don't touch my face. Don't shake someone's hand. Don't hug them. Stay a little bit away from them. Like, we need to slow and quell the movement of this as best we can. So, good. That was a fun. No. Elbow bumps, maybe.
To help our students and their families, I've waived interest in all student loans held by federal government agencies, and that will be until further notice.
Oh, that's a big move.
And for a lot of students that are left in the middle right now, many of those schools have been closed. Based on the price of oil, I've also instructed the Secretary of Energy to purchase, at a very good price, large quantities of crude oil for storage in the U.S. Strategic Reserve. We're going to fill it right up to the top, saving the American taxpayer billions and billions of dollars, helping our oil industry and making us even further toward that wonderful goal which we've achieved, which nobody thought was possible, of energy independence. It puts us in a position that's very strong, and we're buying it at the right price. And that's something that would have not even been possible a week ago.
That's a big move too.
So we're going to fill it up. It's a good time to fill it up. I'd like to ask Mike Pence to say a few words, please. VP.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is this day should be an inspiration to every American, because thanks to your leadership from early on, not only are we bringing a whole of government approach to confronting the coronavirus, we're bringing an all of America approach. Mr. President, from early on, you took decisive action. You suspended all travel from China. You created travel advisories, South Korea and Italy. We screened all travelers from all airports in both of those countries. And on the unanimous recommendation of your health experts, you, at midnight tonight, will effectively suspend all travel from Europe. And Americans that were returning will be screened and asked to voluntarily participate in a 14-day quarantine. Throughout this process, Mr. President, you put the health of America first, but you brought the best of America to address it. And it's not just at the federal level. As you said, Mr. President, we've been working with states across the country. We issued broad guidelines from CDC for every American. But this week, at your direction, we tailored specific recommendations from CDC for New York, Washington State, California, Massachusetts, and Florida. And we've been in continuous contact, as you said, with governors around the country. Mr. President, you have forged a seamless partnership with every state and every territory in this country to put the health of our nation first. But today, I trust that people around the country that are looking on at this extraordinary public and private partnership to address the issue of testing with particular inspiration.
Remember to smash that like, smash likes for coronavirus. Smash dislike for coronavirus. I don't care. Either way, like, dislike.
You directed us to immediately reach out to the American business sector, commercial labs, to meet what we knew then would be the need for testing across the spectrum. And today, with this historic public-private partnership, we have laid the foundation to meet that need. For Americans looking on, by this Sunday evening, we'll be able to give specific guidance on when the website will be available. You can go to the website, as the President said. You'll type in your symptoms and be given direction whether or not a test is indicated. And then at the same website, you'll be directed to one of these incredible companies that are going to give a little bit of their parking lot so that people can come by and drive-by test. Mr. President, I want to join
you. A little bit of the parking lot.
These are companies that are synonymous with communities large and small, where people come together, and now they're going to come together to meet the needs of the American public. These commercial laboratories, LabCorp and Quest and Roche, have just done an incredible job stepping forward, and they're going to literally make hundreds of thousands of tests available and being processed with results to patients in the very near future. But it's all a result of you tasking us with bringing together not just government resources, which all state labs can now test across the country. CDC is testing. But you said, Mr. President, that we wanted to bring all the resources of the country together, and that's what this partnership really means. You know, the truth is that we have coronavirus cases now in 46 American states. And while the risk of serious illness of the coronavirus remains low, we want to encourage every American to practice common sense, practice good hygiene, go to the CDC's website to see what the guidance is for your community or for the American people broadly. And as the President has said, it's especially important now that we look after senior citizens with chronic underlying health conditions. Last week, the President directed the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services to raise the standards at our nursing homes, increase inspections at our nursing homes. And today we're offering very specific guidance, which Seema Verma will articulate about visitations at nursing homes.
Okay, so the rest of this, you know, as far as I can see so far, is not is not all that important. What everything Mike Pence is saying is basically just it's we'll call it noise for now. But again, if we look at the markets here, they're actually taking it quite positively. Here we see a 9% increase from this at the start of this national emergency. And what I think is important here is to recognize that it seemed like Donald Trump had to try to coordinate a bunch. One of the reasons why there wasn't a lot of testing getting out is because of the rules that the FDA had in place. To change those rules, they had to probably go into a public emergency. To call a public emergency, they probably had to get everyone on board. I could see how it's slow. Not what you want in the time of a crisis, but hey, again, better late than never. And again, this price increase off of this news is 9% on the S&P 500. I do not believe we're anywhere near the bottom. I don't think we're even close to seeing the effects of this. This is going to ring out for years in terms of how the reaction plays out. So this spike right here, I'm going to be playing this as hedging my bets with insurance and shorts. Just because that's the best, that's the most I'm interested in, is at least preserving the wealth that's there. And again, remember, guys, your life is so rich and valuable as it is. Even with no money, I know I could go out, I could sleep on the beach, I'd be having a great time. I could find coconuts everywhere. Go outside, appreciate what you have. We'll continue watching the rest of this here, just because I want to see if there's any other good data that comes out of it. So thank you all for joining us. Smash that like button to smash the coronavirus. Just pound it out of existence if we can here. For every like, we save a life. No, that's not true. I can't say shit like that. This is not medical advice or financial advice at all. I don't trust anything I say. Come to your own conclusions, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you are all, I believe you're all intelligent enough. If you're here and you're in the bed and you're watching this, you're intelligent enough to understand that you are in charge of your own life. So use this data as you will, but we'll keep watching this public address of this, or State of the Union address, whatever they call it.
It's important to remember that they were there for us when we were growing up, Mr. President. They helped us with our homework. They tucked us in at night. They cheered us on as we pursued educations, cheered us on in our careers. And now it's time for us to be there for them and to recognize that seniors with chronic health conditions are the most vulnerable, and Americans can make a difference. So wash your hands, use common sense, look after the most vulnerable. And Mr. President, I know I join you in saying that every American should be proud of this incredible public-private partnership that's going to be speeding access of testing to millions of Americans in the weeks ahead. And together, as you've said many times, together we'll get through this. Together we'll put the health of America first.
Siva, where's Siva? I'd like you to maybe take that a step further, please, on nursing homes. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, thank you to the President for the declaration. It allows my agency, CMS, that runs Medicare and Medicaid and has oversight of all of the nation's healthcare facilities, to suspend regulations that could get in the way of treating patients during this time. These temporary national
Okay, again, I don't think there's going to be anything more important. We saw pretty much all the big sentiments come out. We'll leave it at that. Guys, again, remember, this is going to last for months. The recovery time here, the supply chain, people could be in quarantine in their homes. Get ready for that. I think what they're saying is they're going to try to build out as best as possible the availability for everything that you might need if you have to be in quarantine. This is important. I think social distancing, this stuff should have been in place from the very beginning. But again, better late than never. So please get yourself together, be productive in every way you can. Panic is the wrong word for it, but definitely understand that there is a sense of urgency and necessity in the work that's being done here from you as an individual to help protect others as well. This is not just about you. If you are younger or that fucking asshole of a basketball player who should be fired for touching all those microphones and then finding out he was case positive for COVID-19, this type of ridiculous behavior from people that are supposed to be, let's say, role models should be, they should be exemplified as what not to do. I hope they fire that dumber for what he did. For those of you that didn't see that, I guess we could watch that video. I'm just, basketball player touches mics. This fucking retard here, what's his name? Rudy Gobert, you piece of shit. Absolutely no sensibility in your actions whatsoever. I hope you get fired for this. I'm not a fan of sports, and to see people like this that get paid such a large amount of money act like such careless fucking fools is really, really angering. And here you go, Rudy Gobert, you piece of shit. I hope they fire you. You do not deserve any of the love that you're asking. Oh, my support, concern of out. Man, if you're going to play it like a joke, then hopefully the world treats you like a joke. This guy ran up and effectively touched all the microphones during a press conference. Here we go. We can see it. We can see this fool touching the mics. This media could not load. I wonder why. 4.1 million views. Okay, see, here he is. He pretended he was going to do it there, and then he was like, wait, no, I'll do it. I'm just going to touch all the mics like a fucking asshole. Yeah. And then get tested positive and run away laughing. This type of behavior should be, I hope they fire this guy. I hope they say, look, you made a public fool out of the entire National Basketball League by acting like a child. It is unacceptable. This puts people's lives in danger. And he, in his tweet here, he's like, oh, I may have endangered people. You did endanger people. That is 100% fact. You endangered other people's lives. Maybe not the direct people sitting in those rooms, but their parents or their grandparents. Anyways, this type of shit is totally unacceptable. If you see people that are not taking this seriously, this is not the flu. You need to play safely here because the unknown unknowns are significantly higher of a cost than just being a nice person, doing the best you can to self-quarantine, wear a mask if you're sick. Anyways, let's deal with the Arcane Bear. I'll be back on later tonight. These markets are absolutely crazy to be trading right now. I hope you guys are having fun. And don't be dumb here. Don't do things like this fucking retard. It's just not acceptable. I don't think this is acceptable. This should be publicly shamed. And that's what I'm doing right now. Anyways, this is Teal with the Arcane Bear. I'm signing off for the rest of the day. Remember, smash that likes button for smashing coronavirus. Fucking pootie pie. Brilliant. Anyways, I had a great time with you guys today. We will chat again soon. I'm signing off. That's the national emergency. Do the homework because I don't know what small changes they may have made in terms of funding that they didn't really give to us there. So keep a close eye on your portfolios. Tell everyone you love them, and remember how wealthy you already are just for this miraculous moment of life and existing. This is Tio with the Arcane Bear. We're signing off for the day. We'll see you guys on the other side.